And we are live. Welcome to the Eat Well, Move Well radio show. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. I'm honored to have my guest today, Brandon Webb, all the way from USA. Welcome, man. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Damien.
Hey, I've listened to just about all your books. I've got Audible up here. I'm scrolling through. It's cool, man. And one of your books, the first one I read, Among Heroes, was phenomenal. So I'll go through your books a bit more, but just painting a picture for the audience as they're starting to listen. I apologize to you, Brandon, because I'm not going to do you justice. You've got a massive, massively wide range of skill sets and career paths, but you're a Navy SEAL. You're an author now. You're running, I think it's $100 million media company dedicated to the military. Man, you've got a very diverse CV there. Your books have been phenomenal, and they really did resonate with me, especially that Among Heroes, man. That was, I would say, that was pretty cathartic for you.
Yeah.
And for me listening, I could relate to some of those stories, and the ones that I couldn't relate back to my buddies in the military. I could see where you're coming from as well. So kudos to you, man. It was amazing to hear. They're all audio books. Amazing to hear your writing. So I'm grateful to have you on the show.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. That Among Heroes was a tough one. Yeah, it was a tough one to write, and especially with my friend, one of my closest friends, Glenn, passing away in Libya. But I still get reach out from the family. Heath Robinson's father reached out to me a couple of weeks ago. So it's nice. Those kind of moments make it worth it. And as you know, like, the people, the guys we lost, can't tell their stories. So it was nice to kind of honor these guys and turn it into a positive, which was the most challenging thing I had with writing that book was how do you tell a story about losing these teammates and turn it into a positive story, which I think I tried to do by showing how these guys individually had all these amazing traits that I incorporated to my own life. So, but it was a tough one. Yeah, it was a tough one to write.
We really learn from those peers. People think they're just our friends, but they're special in so many ways. You did do it more than justice. You honored them. And that was my first interaction with Brandon, and now I get to see him and meet him in person, yeah. Which is amazing. Resonated really deeply. So I guess that would almost transition into the most simple question I want to ask you. How did you go from being a Navy SEAL sniper to an author and to where you are now? I mean, where you are now to where you were on the trigger is such a difference, man. I've read your books, but can you tell the audience and hopefully me in your own words, how the hell did you move from one mindset all the way to where you are now? It's amazing.
Yeah, it's, I think, and I'm happy to tell my story, but it's, we all deal with the struggle of transition, right? And I spent 13 years, 6 months, 6 days in the military. I think the biggest challenge people have when they're getting out of the military, especially serving, I would say longer than 4 years, you're really conditioned to this regimented lifestyle. You just, like, trust is built into that military system, and then you're out, and I imagine it's what it's like serving a long prison sentence, in the fact that you just are used to this certain way of life. Now you're outside and into the wild world, and you it's a very different environment, right? I remember just being very trusting to people and having a few times where people take advantage, and it was a big wake-up call to me, like, wow, I'm not in the military anymore. But I made the decision to get out of the the Navy because of my, at the time, my son Hunter was 5 years old. And I remember coming home, I was running the sniper program on the West Coast, and Hunter was like, Dad, and the sniper program was local in California, but we were losing our range time, and we were working up at Camp Pendleton with the Marines. But we got to a point where we started to get our entire 3-month program disrupted because we just didn't have priority. The Marines would kind of change our schedule. So we ended up moving the course to Indiana. So now I'm commuting from California to Indiana, and my son Hunter, who was born when I was in Afghanistan, his birthday is coming up. I can't believe he's going to be 20. Great, amazing kid. But he was born when I was in Afghanistan, and as a 5-year-old kid, he was like, Dad, when, can you come to my baseball game? And it just was one of those moments that hit me. And I started thinking about this, and I said to myself, I'm not going to have a relationship with my kids if I do 20 years or longer. I mean, typically in my peer group, guys were doing 25, sometimes even 30 years. And I just made the decision that, okay, I've done my duty. I had an amazing career, but it's time for me to move on. But then it was like, to your point, what the hell do you do? There was a moment there where I was going to night school to finish my degree, and I was majoring in aeronautics because I've always loved to fly planes. And so I started doing the research, and I realized that, okay, being a pilot, professional pilot, probably not going to be around as much as I'd like. And I was also trying at this stage, I started to have some marital issues. And so that was part of it too, try and save the marriage and spend more time with the kids. But I was like, what do I do with myself? So my parents were entrepreneurs, and I started exploring business. And then I took a class, and I remember taking this class in school, and they started talking about the wealth distribution in the world, and how the top, call it top 1%, the majority of the top 1% are business owners. And it really hit me. And so then I started thinking, okay, let me explore business. And look, so I got out in 2006, and I started looking at, what kind of business could I get into? And what helped me also, my best friend, Glenn, who I wrote about in Among Heroes, he got me into this contracting program, which eased my transition. I went back to Iraq and made really good money, allowed me to kind of transition and put some savings away. And then, my first idea was, okay, there's this lack of training areas in Southern California, not just for military, but for police as well, and fire.
Yep.
They didn't have a regular place to do driver training. They would do it at the parking lot of these stadiums, and it just wasn't good enough. And so I'll try not to make a long story longer, but I had this idea to build a training facility on the West Coast. And so I found 1,000 acres of land out in Imperial County, which is about, I think, just under 2-hour drive from San Diego. And we were going to build a racetrack and eventually some shooting ranges. And in hindsight, I wish I had have just done the racetrack. It would have been much less politically contentious.
Yeah.
Because the moment you have the shooting ranges, all of a sudden it got very political. If I had done a racetrack, it would have been a great business, because all the car clubs were excited about it, the Porsche Club, but it is what it is. I raised money with a couple partners. We raised just under $4 million. We bought the land. We went through a 3, almost 4-year permitting process, and we got our permits. And the day after we got our permits, the county had to vote. The planning commission voted unanimously. I think unanimously for the project. It went up to the Board of Supervisors, the local elected body. They voted, I think, 4 in favor and 1 against. And we got our permits. And then the day after, an environmental group sued the county as a way to kill our project. And then the housing market collapsed. This is in like 2008, and everything went to hell. And you know, it essentially killed our project, because the government said, we'll fight this, but you need to you need to cover our legal fees. Imagine giving the government a blank check to fight. So our investors were like, look, we can't put any more money into this. And everyone was kind of dealing with this massive global financial crisis.
Yeah.
And basically worried about their own portfolios and personal situations. So the project, it was a tough pill for me to swallow, but I ended up having to walk away from it. But I was very humbled and a little bit depressed, because I'd put so much of my energy and my life savings into this. And then at the same time, you know, my wife at the time and I decided to get divorced. And so now I'm no business, no life savings. You know, my ex moved the kids north to be with her family's ranch in Paso Robles. And now I'm in this empty house by myself, you know, thinking about, you know, where's the tallest bridge I can jump off of.
Oh man,
joking,
the dark places we go, huh?
Yeah. It was, you know, I never quite got to that point, but it was depressing. And I remember having this moment where I just started thinking, wait a minute, how do I turn this into a positive? And the biggest, I would say the biggest takeaway for me in the military was when we overhauled our sniper course. As a cadre, we said we need to teach better. We need to modernize the sniper program. But we had this look in the mirror and said, how do we be better teachers, better instructors? And we brought in all these performance coaches. And one of them was this guy, Lanny Basham, who was a gold medalist and really a pioneer of positive psychology and mental management. And Lanny, who had used this program to win the gold medal after, and it's an amazing book called With Winning in Mind. That's his book. You can find it on Amazon. Incredible read. He really was a pioneer. He had lost the gold medal was his in Munich. I think in the 70s, early 70s. He went to Munich, was a world champion rifle shooter, and choked because the Russians were heckling him on the bus. And he said it was the worst performance of his life. And he shot enough for silver, but he's like, obviously that's the first loser is second place.
Yeah.
And he came back to the United States, and he went to all these psychologists, and they were like, Lanny, we're just going to make you okay with being number 2. And he's like, that's bullshit. He's like, that's bullshit. That's not what I'm looking for. So he developed this mental management program and started using it on himself to win the gold in Montreal next time around. And so his story made a huge impact to me. And he taught us cadre the importance of visualization, self-talk, and basically, you know, the self limits that we set on each other. I mean, how many times have you heard people say, I'm just not good at math, or I'm not good at this? Like, we have these conversations with ourselves in our head, and we set these glass
limiting beliefs
ceilings. Yeah, these limiting beliefs. And if you think of yourself a certain way, how can you possibly perform beyond that? So I'm having this conversation with myself, and that's the self-talk, right? Years later. And I said, wait a minute, time out. I need to think about what I learned and take all these positive lessons away from this failure. Because just because you fail at something once doesn't mean you're a quitter. And so I started thinking, well, I learned how to raise money. I know how to raise debt and equity. I can read a business financial statement, a P&L, and a balance sheet, where before I was completely illiterate in those reports.
Yeah.
I understand the basics of finance and business, and so, and then things started to look a lot more positive. And I said, wait a minute, okay, I can buy a business, I can start another one. So things started. It just, once I had that mindset shift, things started to look very different. So I ended up getting a job with a defense company called L3 Communications, and it was an amazing experience. It put built up my savings, but I knew about a year and a half into that job, no, probably a year, that I didn't want to be an employee, but I knew that this was a means to an end. And I started exploring other things out there in business that I could do. And I had, my friend Marcus Luttrell had written that book, Lone Survivor, one of the first modern SEALs to have a book out, and the book did very well. And Marcus said to me, he's like, yeah, you have a great story with your, kind of crazy childhood, growing up with hippie parents and living on a sailboat. You should write your story. And so I started thinking about it. And then I ended up getting a book deal after getting turned down a bunch of times, because this was back in, what are we talking, 2010, when nobody really, the SEALs weren't a big thing. They weren't very popular. People still didn't really know about the special ops world. And so I ended up getting a book deal. And then I started writing for some magazines. I found out that I had a passion for writing.
Right.
And I'd been published in a few magazines. And then I got noticed by military.com, and they asked me to blog for one of their men's kind of gear sites called Kit Up.
Yeah.
And then I ended up running that as the editor. And I was getting paid nothing, but I was having so much fun, like building this community. And what I realized back in 2010, you didn't have a lot of information on the internet about the different units, the history. Nobody knew that New Zealand had an SAS unit, the Polish Grom, stuff like that. So, and what was on the internet were these very technical forums that were run by a lot of active duty and retired guys, but they didn't like when an average Joe came in and asked questions. They just like, hey, get the hell out of here. It wasn't a very friendly environment. So I created this like friendly, safe space for these guys to ask questions, and I would interview friends. And all of a sudden, this kind of hobby job I was doing on the side blew up into one of the top blogs for military.com.
Wow.
And I said, and they tried to hire me, but it was funny because they flew me up to San Francisco, where they're headquartered, gave me the tour, and they tried to hire me. And I remember having a conversation with the editor back in the day. It's Ward Carroll, who was a backseat Rio and Jets. I said, Ward, I don't know how to break it to you, man. I make more than you at L3 right now, and you're the editor in chief. I don't see how. I don't see how this is going to work out. And I ended up starting SOFREP, and said to myself, well, let me try and do my own website and build my own team. And then, so I started SOFREP in 2012, and it just took off like crazy. And it was originally designed to cover kind of this military culture, but it turned into a news site overnight, because the guys that were writing for the site would read a article in the New York Times and in these other outlets and say to themselves, well, that's not what's going on in Afghanistan or North Africa. And then they would call their friend and get the real story, and we'd put it out there. And then all of a sudden we were breaking news stories, and it was an unintended, I never intended to start a news site, but that's what happened. And we were the first, right? Like there's a few, Task and Purpose, it's a great site, and they're but they didn't exist. These other sites were out there. And so the thing blew up, and it turned into a business. I ended up leaving L3 and going in full time. The same time I left, my book came out right alongside my friend Chris Kyle, who wrote American Sniper. And the popularity of his book just lifted mine up there. And then so I left L3 in 2012. I did some consulting for him. It was an amazing experience. I had a great mentor there, a woman boss named Alyssa, and she was an amazing mentor to me, and so I learned a ton from that experience. But that was my pivot back into entrepreneurship, and once you had that taste of freedom, for me, I just didn't want to give it up. I said, like, I can plan my own schedule. But anyway, that led me to SOFREP, more books, more opportunities. And look, I've had plenty of lessons learned running SOFREP. And we started a subscription box business, I think in 2015, called the Crate Club. That's what kind of took the overall business to the next level.
Yeah.
But a lot of problems with, I was running a media business with no assets to all of a sudden trying to manage a fast growing, 300% type growth per year business that went from, 0 to 15 million revenue in just over 2 years.
Wow.
And had no experience managing product, sourcing product, trying to predict, how many new subscribers are coming for the next month. And so how much product do we need to order? We don't want to order too much. And I made a ton of mistakes, hiring mistakes. I just, and it got so bad. And this is the kind of stuff they don't tell you in business school case studies. Is I ended up having a friend of mine who was working as our product procurement guy. He ended up getting hooked on drugs through the Veterans Hospital in the US. And it kind of went under the radar. By the time I found out about it, it was kind of too late to kind of save him in the work environment. So I had to let him go, and gave him a 2-month paid severance package, talked to his wife, and tried to get him into a program. And less than a year later, he had overdosed and taken his life. So that's the kind of hard stuff that they don't talk about normally in this business class. And then found out that we had an extra $2 million of inventory in the warehouse.
Oh.
And I'm like, so I ended up having to sell that business in 2020. And I went back right at the end of 2019, I decided to go back to school. I applied for this special program at Harvard Business School. I got in my second application. They turned me down the first time, but I figured it was maybe, timing. And now I understand this program is for entrepreneurs. They try and build a very unique cohort of mixed backgrounds and countries. But I got in the second time, and that, it took getting humbled by that whole experience to realize, life is about constant learning.
Yeah.
And so I went back to school. I just finished that program, and it was transformational in the education, but also the network. And I think that was probably the longest answer you ever got to your first question, but that's kind of where I'm at today.
Oh man, I am
still
honored
learning, and
you're constant learning. I'm honored to speak to you, Brandon. I'm honored with all the guests I have on the show. I often say I get to speak to the best people in the world at what they do, and I never say that lightly. A few things I see from that. You said the struggle of transition, and me looking on the outside, starting to read some of your books. I mean, I'll go through some of the titles here because I try not to go through what someone's already done in a show, in a podcast, or in the books, because I can't do it as well as you did on the day. And your books are phenomenal. So, Among Heroes, we spoke about the Benghazi book, phenomenal. The Killing School, man, what a name. It resonated with me. It probably resonated with nobody else, but a sniper school remastering that program. I'm literally listening to Total Focus right now. The one I haven't got is Red Circle. It's not on Audible, but I do want that. It's on my list. But you've got so many books there. But looking at that, looking at SOFREP, looking at your amazing story of, somebody offered you 12 mil for your business, you turned it down, now it's worth 100. People look at you from the outside, and I guess is what they do with all special forces guys in a way, and go, oh, he's got it easy, he got there organically and simply. But no, the struggle of transition is real. But when
Yeah.
you're talking about your thank you for being so open as well. So I hope I can say this without being sorry, but when you talk about your failure there in your first business, you could hear in your voice there was a positive spin, either, and you've organically let it go, the downside of it, and you've actually moved on and learned from that. Whereas a lot of us, we hang on to those failures. So yeah, your answer was awesome. It showed the steps of where you've grown to, and that's what I wanted to do with this interview. And constant learning, man. When I was listening to Total Focus and your books that you're reading all the time, it shows that unrelenting pursuit of excellence, which I love, because you've brought that was one of our tenets in the unit. You brought the Special Forces mindset into your world. Probably it looks like, without all the crazy negative stuff that we have going on, you've done literally in your sniper course the positive psychology, that mental management, and that will stand you in good stead in the civilian environment, and obviously it has, which is why you're so successful. Yeah, it's
Well,
brilliant.
the thing is, you and I both know there are some skills and practices in the special operations world that do not translate well to civilian life. You can't settle a dispute by taking it out back and pounding it out with your fist. It doesn't work in the corporate world, as much as sometimes I wish it did. But yeah, I think the mental management part of and that experience I went through, learning from some of the best performance coaches in the world, really made an impact on me and helped with my transition, my mindset, even with my divorce. I have an amazing co-parent, Gretchen. We decided both, we had a great psychologist that helped us move on. But I see so many of people I know that just holding on to this, principle, and it just tears them apart, and they end up, having a ton of conflict with their ex-wife.
Yeah.
And then they don't have a relationship with the kids. Like, my ex and I just said, we're going to make the best of it. We're going to be good co-parents. We have, very untraditional kind of, as divorce goes in America. We decided the kids would have one home, they would live with her, and then I would either visit or get them for the big holidays. And I remember friends would judge me. They would say, well, you don't get to see your kids every weekend. I'm like, no, but the time that we do spend together is very quality time. And they have the stability of one house. They're not bouncing back and forth. But the point is, we made it work. And our parents on both sides were fighting initially. And then they realized, they looked at us and said, wait a minute, how come they're getting along so well? All of a sudden, both sets of families kind of stepped in line and saw that we were providing this positive example, and then started to get along. And then they started like visiting each other's, on vacation and stuff like this. So it turned into a very good situation. I have amazing kids. Their mom is incredible, and her and I have been through hell, right? I'm not going to say it's been easy. She had, she was having kids as I was, off at war in Afghanistan. But we decided to make it work, and I have, I'm just so grateful for that. And she sent me a text yesterday for Thanksgiving, just like thanking me for being such a good dad. And I don't know too many divorced people that can say that. And to look at now because people always ask me, why did you leave the service at the top of your career? And you're so close to retirement. But I wouldn't trade it for anything, because I have a great relationship with my 3 children. I was there for them to kind of mentor and be there as a dad. And now to see the kind of fruits of that, my son is at St. Andrews in Scotland as a computer science and psychology major. He's, he was running, we have a small real estate business, and he's running a self-storage, and he was running that since he's 17. That's his college job. My daughter is an amazing artist. She's going to study in the Netherlands next year, product design. So
wow.
my youngest, I'm trying to, he's an amazing kid, but he's his own, he reminds me of me because he doesn't care too much for school. He likes sports, but he's an amazing kid as well. But yeah, so proud of him. And I wouldn't, I think back, what would my life look like had I done this, you know, 7+ more years to retire.
Yeah.
I would have had a very different life. And you and I both know these, you know, you got, your body can only take so much, body and mind. I know guys that, look, I deployed to combat twice. I know people that 15, 20 combat deployments, and they're not the same person. And I really hope that, not to go on a tangent about the US government, but I really hope the government takes care of these people and realizes that you cannot, especially in the SEAL community, we have made some major missteps in the SEAL community, with top management, and you cannot have a system that encourages you to skip taking a break just so you can make promotion. And that's what happened in the SEALs.
Right.
To promote up, you just kept having to deploy to combat, when they should have said, look, time out, take a break, decompress, take your shore, we call it shore duty in the Navy, go do an instructor tour for 3 years, spend time with your family. But we didn't do that, and now we're paying for it because we're having a lot of guys in the SEAL community struggle with transition and all sorts of other issues. But yeah, I'm thankful I decided to get out when I did.
And there's two things that stand out there, and it's blowing my mind actually, when I'm listening to you. One is the word transition. I've interviewed a lot of vets. I'm wearing this shirt for DJ Shipley today from, I don't know if you know DJ, but cool bunch of guys. Interviewed Pat Mack, a Delta guy, the other day. Literally another, he's an Aussie SAS guy yesterday. We talk about transition, but I think I just understood what transition actually means, because I can see as you're talking about your family, Brandon, you have transitioned. So we use the word transition. It's a term. I'll transition out the military. I'll transition the struggle, the dark place. But you've literally, man, you've transitioned from the guy in body armor, the guy in behind the trigger, to where you are now. And I'm fairly good at reading people, I think. You seem like a whole person. Whereas a lot of us, there's a little bit back there, and a lot for some of us back there. We haven't transitioned out of that. We still see ourselves, we haven't let it go. I love John McPhee saying, those words, you got to let it go. I still find it hard.
No, it's tough. But I have let it go. And that's, if I was giving advice to anybody transitioning, you got to let it go. You cannot, look, you can honor your service and that chapter of your life, but that cannot define you if you're going to transition into something else. And that's something that took a while for me to learn, but I have for sure let it go. And I'm an entrepreneur, and part of that was also going back to school, educating myself, but surrounding myself with the best people I could. And I belong to the Young Presidents Organization, global group of CEOs, and now this program I just finished at Harvard Business School. I have 100 classmates all around the world, from private equity, venture capital, to a friend of mine, Thibaut, who was a young French guy that he ended up chasing some girl that he fell in love with in London back to Guinea, Africa.
Wow.
And this guy's story is incredible. He's like, Brandon, I get to Guinea and my girlfriend, she tells me, and I'll do my best French accent here. She tells me we must be married. It's a Muslim country. And he's like, Brendan, I had no idea this was Muslim country. And what do I do? I left my finance job. My family wants to, get rid of me because they're like, Thibaut, we spent all the money for school and now you're like in Africa. He's like, he's like, so now I have no job, no girlfriend, and I try and import alcohol to Guinea, and then the mob comes to me and says, Thibaut, that's our job. So he ends up figuring out that there's a huge bauxite as a what they use to make aluminum out of.
Yeah.
There's mining opportunities in Guinea. So he goes and gets one of the first mining exploration permits. And now he's back in Paris trying to raise $1 million, having got this permit. And he had to literally take a gallon of gasoline to the permit office so they could fill up the generator to fire up the computer and print out this permit. And now he's back in Paris and he's like, Brandon, he's like, I sent 2,000 emails on LinkedIn. He's like, everyone tells me, Thibaut, what the fuck do you know about mining? You're a finance guy. And he's like, no, we can do this. So he raises the money, goes back to Africa, and finds out that his territory has a huge amount of bauxite in the ground. But now he's faced with the same thing. He goes back to France and they tell him again, like, Thibaut, great, you found it, but now what are we going to do? You're a finance guy, not a miner. Meanwhile, the largest Chinese mining company comes to Guinea, and this billionaire Chinese guy says, hey, I'm here for the bauxite. And the government says, we've only issued 2 permits. You can talk to the Saudi Royal Fund or this French kid Thibaut. He's like, give me the French guy's number. 4 days later, Thibaut and his initial investors negotiate a deal, a partnership with this guy. And then 4 months later, they have a fully operational mine with 10,000 employees in Guinea.
Wow.
And this guy, he's been cashing, millions of dollars every month and royalty checks.
Wow.
And it's like, this guy's got a crazy story. And that's the kind of people I met in this Harvard entrepreneur business school program. Amazing stories. And it's such a great group of people to surround yourself with. And they've been, YPO and the Harvard community have been a huge help with me being able to kind of carve out a new identity, to kind of, hey, I was a SEAL. I was a great experience, but that's not who I am now.
Yeah, you nailed it, man. You just throwing out those words, and those words will resonate because I literally interview people on this each week. Identity, ego, transition. Surround yourself with those people. And DJ, that's why I put this one on, was because he said, everything. I was going to do an American accent, but I won't butcher it, man. His voice is probably deeper than mine. Everything you do in the military is part of a team. A team of 2, a team of 4, whatever it is. And the SEALs were called the teams. My CT was a team. And then you get out and you think you can do it by yourself. It doesn't really work. It's not logical. But, it's beautiful to see the place you're in now, Brandon. You surround yourself with all those people. You did it with the self-improvement stuff in this, or the positive psychology stuff in the sniper reprogramming. But then you've gone back and done that in your civilian world. And you've really, it's hats off to you. You've removed that ego from that and just wanted to learn it. And man, wealth comes to those who get it right, I think.
Yeah. And it's you and I know it's a tough thing to let go of that. Because then, when you're in the military and wearing the uniform, and you take that uniform off, having been like, people look at your uniform and go, they see it, they see the badges and the unit, for us, it's the SEAL Gold Trident.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of commands this amount of certain respect, and that uniform's off, and you gotta, it's a tough thing to let go. And a lot of guys can't do it. And I just hope, I hope more people listen to shows like this and can can learn that you got to let it go, and you got to put the ego aside, and then seek out the same whatever career you're going to be in, whether it's the fire department, or you look for these groups and surround yourself with good people, and life is a journey. I look at so many interesting people in history and business that were able to reinvent themselves even in their 50s.
Yeah.
There's the guy I read a case study at Harvard about Spider ski equipment.
Oh yeah.
The guy that started Spider was 49 years old. He actually started Spider and Pearl Izumi, the bicycle component company.
I know the one.
At the same time, and he was 49, and then he ended up selling the Spider piece of the business, and when he was in his 70s, I think mid 70s. But talk about a great story. And his son actually was still on the board when they did the sale. But it shows you, like, this guy reinvented himself at 49 years old.
Yeah. Like you said, what chapter of your life you didn't say what chapter of life are you in, but you're into this next chapter. But you did also, and just to tie a bow in this whole, I didn't know I was going to go down the transition route. I just wanted to hear your success story and how did you go from here to here? Because it was really intriguing, man. And to sum that one up, you started with creativity of writing. It wasn't your day job. It was actually your non-paid job, and that creativity of writing turned into more things you love. But to tie a bow in the transition side, you talked about, you hope the US military starts to look at the way they're doing things. What I think we're doing, and I really do think, the level you're at of being a CEO of what you're at, and you coming on my little show, thank you very much, because I do hope I help someone out there. I think we as team guys, we're helping each other. For me to stay up here, to organize with your amazing assistant Angie to get you on, if somebody listens to this and one little thing you said or something they hear resonates and it changes their transition or their identity and gives them something to help them out of that hole, then that's what we're doing to help people. And I think it comes back on us. We're doing it naturally to look after our mates like we were taught back in the day.
Yeah, and honestly, this is a conversation that my group and the Young Presidents Organization and even Harvard, to credit the faculty at Harvard, we spent half a day talking about, look, the days of sitting back and relying on the government to solve the world's problems are over. Like, yeah, there's a part that the government could play in this, but business, us, as individuals, we need to do our part. We have to do our part to make the world a better place, with the environment, with these social causes. And I think you are seeing companies now stand up because these conversations are happening. Because I'm even in the US, right? People are saying, well, why is Nike taking a stand like this? Why don't they just shut up and sell shoes? But look, the company believes that, this racial injustice, it should be highlighted and talked about, and good on them for having the stones to have this conversation. And we have to do this. Like, we can't just sit back. A government isn't going to solve these problems. They're clearly, in the US, the Department of Veterans Affairs has amazing people that work for the Veterans of department, but it's a massive bureaucracy, and men and women get left behind, and it's up to all of us to kind of make a difference. And a lot of times this peer-to-peer type interaction that we're doing now, somebody will listen to this and it'll make a big difference. So I think that's something that I take on personally now. Even I'm giving this annual, we have this annual meeting with my core team next week. And I said, look, what are we doing as a company make a difference in the world. And so we're taking on this veterans initiative to kind of
Wow.
really, put a stake in the ground and help not only donate money to these nonprofits, but I serve on one of the boards, and just because it's the right thing to do, and we have to, it's great to have a business, but what can we do to make the world a better place? And that's something that everyone's going to have to kind of reckon with sooner or later, because you can't sit back and just think the government's going to solve all our problems. It's clearly not the case.
Oh man, I love that. Make the world a better place. Yeah, I hope as we age, hopefully get a bit wiser, that's what we're all trying to contribute to. Look, I'd like to, I'm aware of your time. I'd like to delve into the other subject I want to speak about. You wrote an amazing book, Mastering Fear. And your story, we'll have to paraphrase a little bit so we can paint it. A friend of yours, Kamal, he was not a good swimmer. Swimming wasn't his bag. He, please hit me up if I butcher this completely. He'd gone to top of the line swim coaches and they'd all failed to teach him how to swim. And he came to you, who was a buddy, and you had a different approach. Is that painted the picture so far?
Yeah. So I met Kamal, oh man, probably going on 5-6 years now. A friend of ours introduced us when he moved to New York, and he said, "You got to meet this guy. He's an amazing guy. He's also an author." Kamal wrote an amazing book called "Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It," and that was his first book, self-published. Sold a ton of copies, and it was his personal journey of building up a big business in Silicon Valley and having it all come tumbling down.
Oh.
And dealing with depression. And then that book did amazingly well. And then Kamal went on to become a very successful tech venture capitalist. His brother is also famous in the US, Naval Ravikant. So Kamal and I got to be really good friends. And, we're in New York. There's not too many, you're not jumping in the ocean every morning in New York City, right? So I didn't realize, it took me a couple years of friendship, and then Kamal opened up to me and he says, "Look, I don't know how to swim, and it really bothers me. I'm in my 40s and I've tried these schools, and I just haven't been successful, and I really would like to overcome this fear of water and learn how to swim." He's like, "Can you recommend to me some courses?" And then it just kind of stuck in me. I was like, wow, he's for one, I commend him for having the courage to speak up.
Yeah.
And also, the courage to kind of face this fear. And so I said, "Look, why don't you give me 1 week and let me see if I can put a program together, and we'll go to the pool." I was a member of the New York Athletic Club, and there's a great pool near Central Park. And I said, "Look, let's go, and I'll give you a private lesson. And just 1 week is all I need." And he was really nervous, because I think he thought, most civilians, they think, "Oh, special ops guy is going to throw me in the pool and yell at me." And so we went. I put a program together, and I really, incorporated this mental management into this. And I said, and I knew that we had to take these baby steps, these tiny steps. And so I put a program together, and I, this Kamal was gripping this ladder getting into the pool, like would just grab for the side of the pool. And I'd seen it as somebody that was took junior lifeguards and was a rescue swimmer before a SEAL. Like I've you see that panic in people's face when they're in the water, and they teach you how to deal with that, because oftentimes those people will grab onto you and drown you.
Do you really punch them like I saw in the movie?
What's that?
The rescue swimmer movie with Demi Moore's
Kevin Costner.
husband. Yeah. Are you really supposed to punch those people that grab onto you?
No, you basically, you deal with them with pressure points but yeah, no punching. That's all the Hollywood embellishment. So anyway, I said, come on, put your face in the water, breathe out, put your face out of the water, take a breath, face in the water. And this is a guy who was terrified to put his face in the water, but I made him do it 100 times. And then he's like, okay, this is not a big deal. Okay, then the next thing I said, look, watch me how I take my lungs. I fill my lungs up with air and I could just float. Then I let all my air out and I sink. I was like, your lungs are like a life jacket. So as long as you always have some air in the lungs, for most people, this applies, you can keep afloat. It's going to help you float. So I taught him how to float on his back and replace the floating on the back, replaced him wanting to grab the side of the pool. I was like, anytime you feel uncomfortable and you have this panic set in, now float on your back, put your arms out and just breathe and get your composure. But that's your new wall. Right. And so I did these tiny things with him. Then I said, go home tonight and I want you to rehearse in your head 10 times everything we did today. And then the next day he came and we would take another step. Then I would say, okay, now swim, back and forth, just 5 meters, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until he was like, okay, this is boring to me now. Then it would just build on that. Then I taught him to sink himself to the bottom, probably 15 feet. So what's that, 5 meters to the bottom of the pool?
Yeah.
Up and down, up and down, up and down. And I started doing this thing, and it was taking these small steps, but it was also building his confidence. And by the end of the week, Friday, he could do a cannonball in the pool, and I could see the joy on his face. He's like, I can't believe how fun this is. He's like, I can't wait to do a cannonball tomorrow. and by Friday, and by the end of the week, Kamal could swim, and he he's not going to swim in any Olympic races, but the guy could swim. He could survive in the water, and he had found this new joy of swimming. And we were riding the subway together on our train back to our neighborhood, and he said, you changed my life, and you need to write a book about this, because everybody wanted to just teach me, they wanted to force me to learn the strokes of swimming. When you saw that I had this thing in my head and you addressed the fear, and then taught me how to overcome the fear in small steps, he's like, you changed my life. And so I wrote an email when I got home to my agent Alyssa, explaining this story, and Kamal, she forwarded the email to editor at Random House, or at Penguin, and our editor said, yeah, I would love to do that book with Brandon. So I was the only book I've ever sold off an email. That was my proposal. But it's one of my favorite books I've done, because it's helped a tremendous amount of people. And I think also, to your point earlier, it shows that there's much more to kind of the special operations mindset than just being like a tough guy and yelling at people. I think people really are fascinated, and also that, look, everybody deals with fear. I have fear. We deal with it way. It's just your relationship with fear. I used to. I mean, I don't know about you. I had lost a best friend skydiving.
Yeah.
I was terrified to go, and I had to go to free fall school.
That's a terrible story, Brandon. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but once I discovered skydiving, I was like, this is amazing. I ended up really loving skydiving. But even right before you get off that ramp, you got that, for me, I get that nervous kind of feeling. And I think it's the kind of fear that keeps you alive, because you're double checking every altimeter setting. But I think what it shows people is, if some Navy SEAL sniper instructor can be open about his own fear, that, wow, that gives other people the courage to kind of deal with their situation. But yeah, it was one of my favorite books that I've written, and love Kamal. We still talk daily. yeah, and I'm glad it's helping a lot of people. It's that book's in, I think, the most languages out of any book I've written.
I absolutely,
Russian, Hungarian, French,
oh, wow.
Chinese. So it's,
Like I love the book. From my personal story, uh, we got three boys. One's mine and two of my partners, Jess's, and one, the 9-year-old boy, we play. He plays rugby,
yeah,
and for like 1 or 2 years, as coaches are trying to make him tackle, do more tackle practice, do more. Jess, take this tackle pad, have him tackle. I heard your book, had a light bulb, went, let me just see what's going on here. And he's afraid of getting hurt
yeah,
in the tackle. It's like, he knows how to tackle. He's done it a million times. So what I did, Brandon, is I had him listen to your story, which is tricky because I think there was some swearing in it somewhere, 9-year-old boy, but he figured it out, man. And do you know what
yeah.
he did? I really tried to empower him, because I'm gonna go back and touch on some of the positive stuff you did, the training, because I actually did some of that stuff 25 years ago. I empowered him. I gave him a whiteboard, and he started writing down the tips. That step one, like you said, hang on the ladder, but we were turning it into tackle. Step two, and he came out with these 5 steps to do. And I said, okay, give me 5 days. We'll take you out and we'll start doing these things. And literally, his mum came up to me after the next game and said, what did you do?
That's amazing. Yeah, that's great. I
It
love
was
hearing those kind of stories.
life-changing for him, Brandon.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. You changed that guy's life.
That for any parents listening, that book, I mean, whether it's Mastering Fear, or the one I mentioned earlier with Winning in Mind, it's a great parenting tool
yeah,
to really give your kids the tools to deal with life. Because we both played sports, and there's plenty of well-meaning coaches that just don't know how to speak to kids, and it can do damage. And giving your kids the tools to recognize when they have the negative feedback from adults, or the self-talk in their head, and they can go, wait a minute, I've got to rethink this. And I taught it to my own kids, and my daughter especially, she's a master. Like she's like, nobody's stopping that girl. And it's cool to see her use this mental management in her own life, and as a ski racer, or debate competition or whatever. But
yeah.
yeah, it's very cool as a parent to see your kids kind of break through like that.
It's a mind shift. It really is. So my story with that is, I listened to Dr. Dennis Waitley, not mind power, that's John Kerr, The Power of Winning, POW. And he actually so he was a naval aviator, and he recounted the story that you have about the POW that in Vietnam, that played around a golf in his head every day.
Yeah.
He recounted that exact story.
Yeah, that's the power of visualization, right? Not having the story is that the guy got shot down in Vietnam and was a captive in a prisoner of war camp for, I think, over 4 years. Played golf in his head to deal with the captivity, and came back, and on the way to the hospital in San Diego, stopped the van and said, I got to get out and play golf. And they're looking at him like he was crazy, because he was malnourished. He barely he looked like you do when you come out of a prisoner of war camp, not in the best of shape or health. Shot the 18 holes and shot par, having not picked up a golf club in over 4 years, in the worst shape of his life. And the people around him that helped him play this round were like, how is this possible? Like, and he's like, guys, I've been shooting perfect golf in my head for 4 years. I haven't hit a bad shot. And so that's the power of the mental visualization.
It really is the power of the mind, and that's what got us into the units. That's what has got us through the different selection processes, be it buds, SAS selection, whatever it is. It got us, we know we're mentally tough enough to do that job, and self-disciplined enough to keep going. and it was just great to see you turn the sniper program around with such, it's not really innovative, but it sure as hell was for the military.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really cool to see. Look, I don't want to hold you up too much. It's been amazing chatting with you. And those that are listening, please go jump on and check out Brandon's books, because they're a wealth of knowledge. We touched on a bit of the things in them in this show. And I've sat down and just, I've listened to them a couple of times. They're life changing, as I said. And you do mention in those books the other resources to look at. I'll put them on the show notes, the ones you spoke about here. You know, with winning in mind, what an awesome book. But Brandon, I'd like to thank you so much for having the time, taking the time to speak with me, to speak so openly. And again, I don't mean it lightly. Thank you for showing and emulating what transition I believe should look like, because you're in a successful place. And yeah, my hat's off to you there.
Yeah, thanks, Damien. So I appreciate you having me on the show, and glad to come back, and hopefully we can make a difference.
Oh man, that would be really cool if we can help someone get out of that place and yeah, pay that forward, all those things we've learned. So thanks again, Brandon. Great to hear from you, and yeah, congratulations on all the things you've done.
Thanks, buddy.